Hello all. So in the last class we have seen what are the criteria to select the number of slots, and also we have seen what is the importance of choice of length of air gap. Okay. So today we will be looking into what are the guidelines for choosing the number of slots in the armature of an synchronous generator. Okay. So generally we choose parallel slots. Okay. With these parallel slots, this will yield tapered teeth. We get parallel slots and tapered teeth. Okay. So what should be the criteria for choosing the number of slots? The very fundamental criteria is the slot pitch. Okay. Basically, the first point what we look into the choice of slots is the slot pitch. Okay. So the slot pitch which is tau s is equals to pi d upon s. Tau s is pi d upon s. Okay. So slot pitch should be such that, and this slot pitch depends upon the value of voltage. Okay. Because if the voltage increases, number of conductors increase, therefore number of conductors per slot increase, hence the slot pitch should be increased. Okay. Therefore the value of slot pitch is considered based on the value of voltage at which the generator is operating. Okay. So this slot pitch tau s should be less than or equal to 25 mm, less than or equal to 25 mm for low voltage machines. So tau s should be less than or equal to 40 mm for machines below 6 kilovolts. Less than or equal to 40 mm for machines below 6 kilovolts. Okay. Then tau s should be less than or equal to 60 mm for machines above 6 kV, okay, and below 15 kV. Generally we operate machines at 6.6 kV or 11 kV. Okay. So these are the slot pitch values what we should get. For hydroelectric generators, for large hydroelectric generators, my slot pitch will be ranging from 50 mm to 90 mm. This can be achieved for large hydroelectric generators because generally we know that hydroelectric generators are having larger diameter and shorter length. So anyhow I am having that generator characterized by large diameter, I can take best use of that. So I can increase the slot pitch. Okay, so that I can house more number of conductors in per slot. Okay. Then for salient pole machine, this is regarding slot pitch. Okay. Then for slots per pole per phase, should be equal to 2 to 4, not 4. Slots per pole per phase should be 2 to 4 for salient pole machine. Okay. And we should be using fractional slot winding. Okay. So for synchronous generators, we use fractional slot winding. fractional slot winding will reduce the harmonics generated in the wave. Okay, fractional slot winding will reduce the harmonics generated in the voltage wave. Okay, and it will make the voltage more sinusoidal. So we use fractional slot winding that reduce harmonics, and we get more sinusoidal voltage. Now what is fractional slot winding? If number of slots per pole per phase is integer, that is called integral slot winding. If number of slots per pole per phase is an integer, that is called integral slot winding. If number of slots per pole per phase is a fraction, that is called fractional slot winding. Okay, so fractional slot winding is and in some induction motor stators also use fractional slot winding. Okay, so fractional slot winding is slots per pole per phase is fraction and greater than 1. It should be greater than 1 or else it will become concentrated winding. If slots per pole per phase is 1, it is concentrated winding. It can't be less than 1. I can't allot less than 1 slot per phase under each pole. It is practically impossible. So my fractional slot winding should be in such a way that the fraction should be obviously greater than 1. Then only it is a distributed winding. We know that we don't go for concentrated winding because it won't yield us the sinusoidal waveform. Okay, so we will be using distributed fractional slot winding in the stator. Okay, so these are the certain guidelines that we need to follow whenever we are choosing the number of slots. Okay, so next is conductor area or area of conductor. Area of conductor. Okay, so Iz current per conductor is given by Iz is equals to, it is current per phase only. It is current per phase. We consider all the conductors per phase are connected in series. Therefore, current per conductor is nothing but current per phase. We use the same thing in induction motor also. Okay, so this is given by Q into 10 to the power 3 divided by 3 into EPH. So this will give us the current per conductor. But it is not necessary all the time that current per conductor is current per phase. Now if the generator is very large, okay, if the generator is very large, so for example, I have a 100 mega volt ampere generator operating at 11 kV. What is the current? I is equals to 100 mega divided by 3 into or root 3 into 11 k. Okay. So what I get is 100 mega divided by root 3 into it is 5248 amperes, 5248.6 amperes. This is the amount of current that each phase has to carry, current per phase, IPH. Practically it is not so simple to make a conductor that carries 5000 amperes of current. Okay, that carries 5000 amperes of current. Now what I can do? What I did in DC machine? In DC machine, it was very much convinced that I cannot generate large powers at larger voltages because of commutation problem. So what I did, or what the first designer did, he kept the voltage level low, but current he divided into number of parallel paths. So current per conductor reduced there. Similarly, even in alternators or synchronous generators, we use parallel paths. We can have a lap winding or a wave winding. Please don't be under impression that the lap and wave windings are only for the DC machines. No, lap and wave windings are for even AC machines. Okay, so if the winding has a number of parallel paths, in each phase, why I use parallel paths? Simply to divide the current. I have so many number of parallel paths. In each parallel path the current gets divided. Now suppose I have some 20 parallel paths I will provide. Now current here is 5200 amperes. Current out is 5248 amperes. Now what is the current in each parallel path? Divided by 20, 262 amperes. So now I need not to have the cross section of the conductor per phase to carry 5248 amperes of current, but instead I will be having conductors of cross section to carry 262 amperes. All those conductors will be kept in parallel. Per phase, so that current in each parallel path reduced. This we do purely to save the copper. Okay, because if a conductor has to carry 5200 amperes of current, what about the cross section area of that conductor? And those many conductors I have to place per slot. The slot size increases, diameter further increases, size of the machine increases, weight of the machine increases, material required increases, cost of the machine increases, transportation complexity increases. Okay, connectivity complexity increases, because it is not so simple to connect winding which carry 5000 amperes of current. The winding may be of this thick. Okay, if the wires are so thick, how will be the connections done? Connections has to be welded there or brazed. I simply cannot connect using like simple wires. Okay, so complexity increases. In general, the complexity increases. So what I will do? Simply I will create number of parallel paths in each phase, and each parallel path will carry the reduced current. Size of the conductor reduces. Okay, and this will also decrease the copper losses, because all the parallel path resistances effectively become less. Effectively, in parallel we know the effective resistance in parallel connection is lesser than the equivalent series connection. Therefore, my copper losses will reduce, voltage drop will reduce, regulation will be better, efficiency will be better, temperature rise reduces. These are all the advantages of using parallel paths. Okay, so please don't think that parallel paths are there in the machines just arbitrarily. No, parallel paths are provided only to minimize the current per conductor. It is to minimize current per conductor, and automatically with this the losses are reduced. Okay. So now, if there are a number of parallel paths in each phase, then current per conductor then current per conductor Iz is equals to IPH by A. Iz is equals to IPH by A. Okay. So, generally current density is delta A is equals to 3 to 5 ampere per mm square. Is 3 to 5 ampere per mm square. Therefore, area of conductor, area of each conductor Az is equals to current per conductor divided by current density. Okay, current per conductor divided by current density, it will come out in mm square. Okay, so this is how we get the conductor area. Okay, next is slot dimensions. So slot dimension should be such that there should not be excessive flux density in the teeth, because slots and teeth go hand in hand. I cannot forget teeth when I am thinking of slot. So my dimension of slot should be in such a way that there should not be excessive flux density in the teeth, because if excess flux density present in the teeth, it will add excess losses in the teeth, temperature rise occur. Okay, this is one case, losses will increase. Second case, there may be tendency of saturation, magnetic saturation in the teeth, so which will induce harmonics in the wave. That is the reason why I should not keep the flux density in the teeth beyond certain limit, and that is 1.7 to 1.8 Tesla. It should not be beyond 1.7 to 1.8 Tesla. And why I am thinking of teeth? Because if I increase this slot dimension, automatically my teeth dimension decreases, because slot pitch is constant. For a given slot pitch or for the obtained slot pitch is obtained based on the number of slots for a given diameter or for a obtained constant diameter. So in that case, as I increase the slot dimension, my teeth dimension increases. My teeth dimension decreases, which will have its own difficulties, okay, imposed. So therefore, I should be aware that when I am choosing the slot dimensions, then my teeth should not suffer. Okay. So with respect to this, maximum flux density in teeth should not exceed 1.7 to 1.8 Tesla or Weber per meter square. 1.7 to 1.8 Tesla. Okay. So how do I get the maximum flux density in the teeth? Bt max is equals to maximum flux in teeth divided by area of teeth. Maximum flux in teeth divided by area of teeth. Okay. Now what is maximum flux in teeth is given by? Okay. Or Bt max, if you want to take maximum flux in teeth per pole divided by area of teeth per pole. We will take per pole, because what happens under one pole, same under all the poles. Because I have flux per pole, that is the reason why I am taking per pole. So phi max divided by area of teeth per pole. I can write this as area of one teeth into number of teeth per pole. This is equals to, see, the flux what I can get from BAB is the average flux. It is not maximum flux. So to get maximum flux, I should divide it by field form factor, that is Kf, which is nothing but my psi. So phi max is equals to phi divided by psi. Okay, this we have done in the last class during air gap calculation. Phi by Kf, if you want, you can. We did it with maximum flux density from average flux density. I can get maximum flux from average flux because area of teeth is same. This is equals to phi divided by psi. Okay, so I can write Bt max is equals to phi divided by psi into what is the area of one teeth? Width of teeth. Okay, width of teeth into length of teeth. Length of teeth is nothing but the net length of the iron, net length of the armature Li, multiplied by number of teeth per pole. Number of teeth per pole are always equal to number of slots per pole. As many slots, so many teeth. Okay, slots per pole. Okay, for maximum flux density in teeth, we get, for maximum possible flux density in teeth, we get minimum possible width of teeth. Minimum possible width of teeth, because if the width of teeth goes below that value, flux density goes beyond that value, beyond the maximum value, which should not happen. Saturation may occur. So there is minimum possible width of the teeth, which we already have seen in DC machine design. Okay, you should remember the things what we already have studied, because everything is related. Okay, in all the rotating machines, many of the concepts are similar. Only thing is the particular quantities will change. That's it. So therefore, and this is equals to what? 1.8. The maximum flux density allowed is 1.8. So therefore, minimum tooth width, that is W2 minimum is equals to, now I will take it to the other side. What I will get is phi divided by psi into 1.8 into, or I will take 1.8 psi into Li into S upon P. So this is the minimum possible width of the teeth. Minimum possible width of the teeth. So first I should be calculating this. How much is the width of the teeth? Minimum possible. Then I should now actually find out what is the width of the teeth. If that is greater than this, that is allowed. If not, change the slot pitch. Okay. So how to get width of the teeth? Therefore, actual width of the teeth is given by width of the teeth is W2 is equals to tau s minus width of slot. Slot pitch minus width of slot. And this should be greater than or equal to WT minimum compulsory. So WT is width of teeth tau s slot pitch WS width of slot. and width of teeth is minimum at the air gap. Okay, because it is tapered teeth we get. You can observe, if the slot has to be parallel, now this is the parallel slot. Okay, this is slot, this is teeth. Because these are conductors. Armature slots are facing the air gap from the stator, not unlike the armature of DC motor or DC machine. Okay, so the minimum width is obtained at the tip of the teeth, not at the root of the teeth. In case of DC machine armature, the minimum width is obtained, taperness is at the root of the teeth, because the teeth there are in the armature which is in rotating part. So teeth are in the outer periphery of the rotor. Here the teeth are in the inner periphery of the stator. So therefore the teeth are with minimum width at the tip but not at the root. This is the root of the teeth. This is the root of the teeth. Okay. So here the magnetic flux available in the air gap. Now this is my pole. Okay. So if the width of the teeth at the pole face is very minimum, then it will add complexity, it will add difficulties in the magnetic circuit as well as in mechanical strength. So that must be taken care. So width of the teeth must be such that it is greater than minimum value. Okay. Next. So generally we take this is width of the teeth, WT, this is WT, and this is depth of the teeth, DT. So generally the ratio of width of teeth to depth of teeth, width of slot to depth of slot is 3, not width of teeth, width of slot. Generally the ratio width of slot to the ratio depth of slot to width of slot is 3. It should not cross 3, because if depth of slot increases, leakage flux increases, leakage reactance increases, short circuit ratio decreases, regulation becomes poor. Okay, overload capacity decreases, stability limit decreases, maximum power, synchronizing power decreases. Okay, so the depth of slot should not be more. More the deeper slots, more will be the leakage reactance. It is true in almost every machine. Okay, so it should be 3. So once I know what is width of slot, okay, what is depth of slot, what is width of slot, if I know this, I can get what is the dimension of the teeth. Okay, next we take length of mean turn. Length of mean turn, and that is empirically it is given. Okay, length of mean turn is given empirically. LMT, LMT is equals to 2L plus 2.5 times pole pitch plus 0.06 kV plus 0.2. Okay, where L is gross length of machine. Gross length of machine. This Li is net length of machine multiplied by stacking factor. If you multiply stacking factor to the gross length, we will get net length. Gross length of machine. Tau P is pole pitch in meters, compulsory in meters because L is in meter. kV is voltage rating of machine in kilovolts. Voltage rating of machine in kilovolts. Okay. So this is length of meter. Next is stator core dimensions. Stator core dimensions. Okay. So what is stator core? These are stator slots. These are stator slots. Okay. Now this is the diameter D. Stator core diameter D. This is depth of stator slot. DSS, depth of stator slot. And on the other side also I will get the depth of stator slot. DSS, depth of stator slot. Then this is the armature core. Whatever the iron part beyond the slot is the core. The slots are punched in the core. Okay. So this is depth of stator core, DCS. Depth of stator core on the top side and also on the bottom side. Depth of stator core. Now, this is the overall diameter of the machine. Outer diameter or overall diameter of the machine. Okay. So, to find out the overall or outer diameter, I should know the bore diameter. I should know the depth of the slot, depth of the core. But depth of the slot already I have taken. In the previous point I have calculated the depth of slot. Now I should be knowing what is depth of core, how to be taken. Okay. Once I get the area of core, I can get depth of core. How to get area of core? By knowing its flux density. Simple. Okay. So flux density in stator core, flux density in armature core is assumed to be 1.0 to 1.2 Tesla. 1 Tesla to 1.2 Tesla. Okay. Therefore, flux density in the core is equals to flux in core divided by area of core. Flux in core divided by area of core. But what is the amount of flux in the core? Generally, core doesn't have the function of energy conversion. It is a supporting magnetic circuit. So flux in the core is kept half the flux per pole produced. Okay, so flux in core, flux in stator core or armature core is half the flux per pole. Okay, so that is flux in the core is 5/2. Then what is the area of core? Area of core is the core is having certain thickness. Now this is the core. Okay, these are the stator slots. These are the stator slots. You can observe. Okay, this part is the core. Now this core is having certain thickness and the length. Now what is the cross section area of this? Thickness multiplied by length. Thickness is nothing but my depth of core. So depth of core multiplied by length of core, and length should not be the gross, it should be the net length. Depth of core multiplied by net length of the core is the cross section area of the core. Okay, so that is given by area of core is depth of core multiplied by net length of core. So that is DCS into Li. Li is 0.9 into L, that is stacking factor into L. Therefore, I can write, therefore, flux density in the stator core, BCS I will take it as. BCS is equals to 5/2 divided by DCS into Li. Now BCS is how much? This is equals to 1.0 to 1.2. Therefore, DCS is equals to, I will take it to up, this will come in the denominator. 5/2 upon 1.0 to 1.2 into Li, or I will write this as 2Li. So I can find out DCS. Once I know DCS, I know DSS, depth of stator slot I know, diameter I know, I can get overall diameter. Okay, so therefore overall diameter, or therefore outer diameter is D0 is equals to, okay, this is the outer diameter, it is DCS, depth of stator core plus depth of stator slot plus diameter of stator core plus depth of stator slot plus depth of stator core equals to D plus 2 into bracket DSS plus DCS. So this is my overall diameter of the stator of an alternator, that is armature of the synchronous generator. Okay, so this is all about the armature design. We'll stop here today. In the next class we will be looking into a design example based on all these parameters, design parameters we looked so far. Then after that we will move to the rotor design. Okay, thank you for joining the class.